All right, this is the recipe editor tutorial, and before going over to the recipe editor, I think it's helpful to look at a published recipe and notice two things specifically. The first is that you can do these inline references here in the instructions, which are super helpful if someone's on a phone and they're scrolled all the way down and they're reading through the instructions and they haven't pre-measured stuff, so they don't want to have to scroll all the way back up to the ingredient list. And you'll notice that these are dynamic references. So as I change the scaling, we can see these references change not only over here in the ingredient list, but also in the instructions. Similarly, if we change from US to metric, we can see that those change there. We've got these timers and a few other little utilities. And so it's just helpful to think about the fact that you're sort of building this structured document as you're writing your recipe and just be thinking about some of the ways people are going to be using that. So let's go over to the editor. I can just go to recipe.site/sign in. And since I'm already signed in, it's going to load up my account. I can go to the creator dashboard and I can see any recipes I've already published. And I'm going to go new recipe, start with the title, chocolate chip cookies. Subtitle is optional, but let's say with cardamom and brown butter. I can add a photo. I can either drag and drop it or select it from my desktop. And then a story is also optional, and it has formatting. So, my grandmother's favorite recipe, etc. And then, you can do like bold, italic, links, headings, lists, all that kind of stuff there. So getting into the ingredients, we can do like, let's say all-purpose flour, 2 cups. Maybe we've got baking soda, 1¼ teaspoons, baking powder. And you'll notice all of these ingredients are linked to our database, which allows us to do the scaling and things like that. We can also do different ingredient groups. So sometimes, people might want to, do like dry versus wet ingredients. So this might be like unsalted butter, 2 sticks, brown sugar, 1 cup, etc. And one thing you'll notice, because these are all linked from our database, sometimes you will encounter ingredients that aren't in our database. So what will happen is, let's say I wanted like peppermint oil, which is not in our database. I would choose custom ingredient. Then I'll get this little pop-up and I can just write peppermint oil. And what that will do is it'll send us a notification on the back end to let us know that you've added peppermint oil as an ingredient to one of your recipes, and then we will go ahead and add it to the database. Another thing you can do that's kind of similar is, imagine you wanted to specify a brand or just call something by a slightly different name. Like, I want to use unsalted butter as the ingredient, but I want to say Kerrygold unsalted butter or whatever the case may be. And you can also add a link. So you can override the sort of default name that comes from our database. And you sort of have to decide, like, if you think it's the same ingredient, you're just calling it by a slightly different name, or like in this case of peppermint oil, if it is truly an ingredient that's different from anything in our database and you think it should be added to the database. We can also drag and drop to reorder these. Preparation might be something like room temperature, You know, in this case, obviously not, but like chopped or minced or cut into 1-inch pieces, etc. And note you can use however you want. You could say optional. You could say I prefer this brand or something like that. Okay, and then down in the instructions, we could say like sift flour, baking soda, baking powder, and salt in a medium bowl. And in order to get those inline references, we're just going to highlight the word, the ingredient, click on the ingredient menu, and select that. Pretty straightforward. You'll probably notice that I haven't added salt yet, so I'm not going to see it in this menu, which is kind of helpful too, because it can sort of help you remember if you've made a mistake and forgot to link something and whatnot. So I would just go back up here and add salt. And you'll also notice that if you do override this salt special name, then when you're down here selecting from this menu, you'll see it by whatever you called it up there. I can add a timer here, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. Usually I'll use timers for any amount of time, like under, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours. I think beyond that, people probably have other, you know, means of keeping track of that amount of time. So I can add another ingredient or another instruction. So, yeah, like maybe preheat the oven to 325F. And as we saw with the recipe, we do temperature conversion. So again, that's going to be something you're going to want to mark up using that. And similarly, if you were like, you know, cut carrots into 1-inch pieces, you would want to mark up 1 inch. So yeah, again, it's like anything that is going to be included in the converting or the scaling or the temperature conversion, you want to mark up. And then similar to the ingredient groups, if we wanted, we could have, you know, brown butter, or you could have a specific instruction group. That's optional. You can also have groupings without titles if you just want things to be kind of divided up, but you know, heat medium pan over stove, add butter, etc. And again, I would mark that up, maybe 4 minutes or something. So yeah, that's pretty much the basics of how you're going to add ingredients, how you're going to add instructions, how you're going to do these references where you're connecting ingredients in the instructions to something from the ingredient list and marking up temperatures and measurements. And then notes, similar to the story, this is a rich text area, so I could do like, you know, I could do like storage, and then I could make that a heading, and then I could say like these keep well for X days or can be frozen and will last up to etc. Prep time and cook time are important, not only for people who are trying to understand whether or not they're going to make the recipe, but also for Google SEO and the way the recipe gets displayed on the front end, which we'll see in a second. Servings, you can customize this label. So we could say like 6 cookies or 12 cookies or whatever it is. And then all these tags are pretty straightforward, so there's not really much to explain there. We are going to eventually have the ability to add custom tags, but for now, we've just got this sort of standard set. So yeah, that's really all it takes. We can hit preview. This is going to open in a separate window. So let me bring the screen share over so we can see the preview real quick. So now we're looking at the preview of the recipe, and you can see again why it's helpful to have this information up here, or this information entered, because it does get shown at the top, which helps people understand that. We've got our 2 ingredient groups. We've got our 2 instruction groups, which don't have names, again, which is fine. Our timer, scaling, converting, etc. And yeah, that is how it's done. Please feel free to reach out at any point with questions.